Hello and welcome to Bound to Be Home, a podcast where experiences of health and home are shared each week by our listeners. Featuring the trials, tribulations and victories involved with chronic illness, we uplift those to share their stories, to connect and to reflect. I'm your host, Katie Cray, a graphic designer who lost her mum to chronic illness. So sit back, relax and enjoy the company as we dive right into this week's episode. So this week's episode is a little bit different. I've had some amazing letters in with people wanting to share their story but not necessarily wanting to have their voice on the podcast. So this one is a letter from a listener who wants to share their story, but I'm going to read it out instead, so you can kind of treat it a bit like an audiobook. But yeah, with that, let's dive right in. Hi, my name is Karen. I have Spina Bifida, acute chronic pancreatitis and achalasia. I was born with spina bifida, but surgery started in 1987 on my spine. I've had a total of 8 major surgeries. The third surgery that I had was 18 hours long. They removed ribs and the bad vertebrae. I was a bit traumatised by this surgery. People say that you can't remember pain. Believe me, I remember the excruciating agony when I was in the ICU. Then one of my lungs collapsed. Wasn't very pleasant having a tube just stuck into me. I had tubes, wires and bags all over me. The second day I was determined to get out of my ICU bed and go for a cigarette. I soon changed my mind when I tried to stand up. I had to learn to walk again. My posture had obviously changed and other parts of me were getting used to the new me. I'd had 2 surgeries previous to this one and I had to have another 5 spinal surgeries. I was diagnosed with acute chronic pancreatitis 18 months ago, which was non-alcohol related. I suddenly took ill one day. The pain was dreadful. My husband took me to A&E where they told me that I had a tummy ache. After what I'd been through previously, the last thing I would go to A&E with is a tummy ache. I'd had my gallbladder out 12 years previously. The next day I was still in agony. The sweat was pouring off me. I couldn't move. My husband couldn't even touch me to try and help me, so he telephoned for an ambulance, which was during the COVID pandemic. I spent 17 hours on a trolley in A&E. I had bloods taken, urine tests, etc. Nothing. I spent 3 weeks in hospital before they did a CT scan which showed my pancreatitis. My husband visited me every single day, 2 or 3 times a day. He was my only sanity. 12 months ago, I was diagnosed with achalasia, which is also a gastroenterology issue. It had a massive impact on my life. It's also very painful and my dietary needs have changed greatly. I've lost 40 kilograms. I've been told by my professor of gastroenterology that I need surgery. Apparently they cut all the muscle fibre in your stomach and insert a balloon. I'm thinking about it. I've read lots about the surgery in the BMJ and the AMJ, but I'm hesitant. But then what do I do if I don't have the surgery? Still contemplating. My spine causes me immense pain. It's fully fused now with rods, cages, nuts and bolts. But here's something to make you laugh. I literally have a screw loose. Yes, it's official. One of the screws in my neck has worked itself loose. The pain. Wow. Screaming agony. It feels like it's ripping me to shreds. But they just can't get the socket set out and tighten it up. Oh no. They have to cut me open from the top to the bottom and do a full service on the rest of the metalwork on my spine. I've been told that it would be 2 12-hour surgeries over 2 days. They'll keep me in a comatose state, obviously, in between days. The pain needs sorting out, but I really don't know if I'm physically or emotionally fit enough to go through the surgeries, because I'm 52. I've been wheelchair bound for about 6 years now due to my spine deteriorating slowly but surely. I'm on an immense amount of options and other medications. I hate going out. I'm embarrassed that I'm in a wheelchair now. This wasn't how it was supposed to be. I had 8 surgeries, not only to save my life, but a wheelchair. This wasn't in my plans. The achalasia has had a major impact on my dietary needs as well. Mashed, pureed food and lots of medications once again. Eating out is something that I don't want to do. I'm most grateful for my husband who does everything. He deserves a medal. He married me knowing that I have spina bifida, but now the gastroenterology issues. He cannot do enough for me. Don't get me wrong, he doesn't smother me. If I say I'm going to do something, he'll say that he doesn't think it's the best idea, but lets me crack on with it. But very annoyingly, he's quite right. I shouldn't have started doing it and he ends up finishing off what I started. It can just be something simple like tidying the cupboards, something super simple. I can't believe that this is me. I cannot do the small stuff anymore. I'm also grateful for my ex-husband, who's my best friend still. He's a great support even though he lives 250 miles away. He worries about me, but I tell him that he's living a better life without me. He's been able to do a lot more things than if he was still married to me, and that makes me happy that he has a lot of freedom to go and do whatever he wants. But we still chat every day. He sends me jokes and interesting articles. And I'm also grateful for my couple of friends. While at home, I enjoy music. I'm going to 3 concerts this year, and I'm very excited about that. I used to love reading, but all the medications have had an effect on my concentration. And I also used to love crocheting, and I was very good at it, but I can't really do that anymore because I've got a screw loose. One thing I remember very fondly is my dog, Denzel, when me and my first husband got divorced. I was alone in the world, but I still had my boy Denz, and I took him everywhere with me. Unfortunately, he passed away 2.5 years ago, but I have photos of him everywhere and I still talk to him. I miss him immensely. Being at home, I love our lounge, which has patio doors which open out onto our lovely garden. The house was a new build when we moved in. My husband has made the garden beautiful. I've bought some lovely furniture for the garden, so here's hoping that A, we have a good summer, and B, the furniture is comfortable enough for me to sit in. But if I can't get outside, we can open the patio doors and it's like one big room. The sun streams into the lounge, which is great. One of my proudest achievements is surviving my surgeries. I wasn't given much chance, but I'm still here. I'm also proud of still having the fight in me for justice. I'm not someone who takes things lying down. Excuse the pun, seeing as lying down is what I have to do a lot of. I still do the administration for the house, cars, motorbike, etc. And I'll fight for every single penny that can be saved on our annual contracts. I refuse to let big companies take the proverbial. A list of companies is available upon request who have felt my wrath. The most helpful thing I found in my journey is finding what you've been diagnosed with and getting as much information as possible from other sources, not just the consultant's information. I'd also say to trust your own intuition. Keep fighting for yourself. If I could give a piece of advice to someone who's just been diagnosed, I'd say please do not treat doctors as if they are gods. You treat them like you would anyone else. Do not be afraid to ask as many questions as you wish, and if you feel the need to, challenge them if you don't agree with them. Get as many opinions as you can / want. If I could ask someone who's had the surgery for achalasia, I'd ask, is it worth it? Apparently it has a 50% success or failure rate, whichever way you choose to look at it. If it fails, then you have to have a feeding tube. Another thing I'd add is if your interests or hobbies are taken away from you due to your illness or disability, try to find something else. I know it sounds maybe even a bit patronising, but believe me, I've been there, come back, been there again, and come back, but still no t-shirts. You'll find a way through. I'd also say keep your sense of humour if you can. I even find that the lowest form of humour, sarcasm, has been very helpful in my time of need. Thank you for reading out my story on your podcast, and I look forward to hearing back from you. From Karen. Thank you, Karen, so much for your letter and for sending it in. I've really enjoyed reading this one because even though, like, from what it sounds like, a lot of the stuff what you've dealt with is just insurmountable amounts of pain, you still seem to be, like, overall quite positive about it, and just the way that you write is just quite fun. And I don't know, I see a lot of my mum in the way that you speak and the way that you are. Like, it's one of those things, it isn't a fantastic situation, but you kind of are just trying to make the best of it. I definitely feel very strongly about how you're saying that this isn't how you were supposed to end up, in a way where you can't really do the small stuff anymore. My mum loved gardening as well, but she in the end couldn't get out and do it, and it got to the point where she'd literally sit outside on the floor in the garden and try and like weed things, but she managed to. But yeah, in the end she couldn't. But again, it's that kind of making it manageable and doing the best you can with it. I think also an overarching theme is love and respect for your pets. We also had a dog who was called Dylan, and I mean, because obviously you're at home a lot, you're always going to be together, and so they have such a bond with you. And I remember after my mum passed, my dog literally ended up passing like a month afterwards because he was very old, but I think his lady was gone and he just kind of gave up, which was so sad. But it goes to show pets mean everything in the world to us, and I think they're a really great companion, especially when you're spending so much time at home. If you want to send in a message about this week's podcast, please send an email to btbhpod@cradedesign.co.uk. There's also a link in the description if that's easier for you. I'm more than happy to pass some messages and comments to help people connect, as part of this podcast is to try and aid in community within the home. You can also get a paper transcript of this week's episode if you wish to read instead of listen by visiting cradedesign.co.uk/btbh. You can subscribe and receive paper copies every time a new episode is released. Again, a huge thank you to Karen for sending in her letter, and if you want to share your story or be interviewed yourself, please send a message to the email btbhpod@cradedesign.co.uk. Some good charities related to this episode include Shine, a charity with information and support for Spina Bifida, and Guts UK, a charity with a focus on gut conditions such as achalasia. Links to these charities are also in the description. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you have a wonderful day.